Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, mayor of Houndstown, USA. Home to the happiest dogs on earth. Why do I say home to the happiest dogs on earth? Since our inception, we've taken care of over 3 million dogs. Today, we have 1,500 dogs in our system in various different states. So then they're all happy. How do we know? Because they drag the customers in the door. Joining me today is the very, very lovely Jackie Bondanza. Smile for the camera, honey. So there.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. So this is obviously a great opportunity for me and Jackie to go back to our roots, so to speak, and talk about dogs a little bit rather than the business of franchising and all the craziness. And this is where my passion lies, and I know it's where Jackie's passion lies. Sometimes we get distracted by the thing we love the most is each other.
Yes, that's a big distraction.
That's a distraction. And, of course, dogs. So, if not for Jackie, I wouldn't be, I don't know where I would be in life. She teaches me.
Well, actually, you used to live in this podcast room, so you might still be in here.
Right. So,
Fun fact, folks.
Yeah. But up until I met Jackie, I really didn't know anything about personal hygiene, how to dress, how to drive. No.
All right. Okay.
But
this is a show about dogs, not your opportunity to complain about.
Oh no, I'm not complaining. I'm putting
how
on a
I've
pedestal.
enriched your life.
I'm putting on a pedestal. I know all these things now. Yes.
All right. Today we're talking about adopting a dog. Adopting a dog into your home when you already have a dog in the home. What are some steps to make that transition easy? What should you consider when thinking about adopting or bringing a second or even a third dog into the home and really adding to your pack?
Right. So again, like most of our conversations, we talk about anthropomorphism and the emotional part of bringing a dog home. Many people rescue dogs or buy dogs, whichever. It doesn't really matter to me. Adopt, rescue, whatever. Is usually sometimes for the wrong reasons. So it's usually a very emotional decision based on something. Whether it's a child, you want to get a puppy for your 5-year-old, or you're lonely during COVID and everybody ran out and emptied the shelters out. So we do it, again, for human emotional reasons, not taking into consideration the dog we're bringing in, the responsibilities, the cost, the necessity to have all things lined up as if you were going to adopt a child or bring a new child into your home.
Okay, so assuming people have done that. Mm-hmm. What are the steps to take to acclimate that new dog to the home when there are other dogs in the house?
Okay, so what I always say, the more dogs and more humans in a house makes everything more complicated. So If we start with the premise there's a single person with one dog, bringing another dog in is going to be simpler. My biggest advice is take children into consideration into this metric. So we all have had this fond experience of being a child and had a dog in the house, and we want to replicate that for our own children maybe. So we run out to the shelter or to the puppy store and get a dog. So the thing that you want to consider is your children first. How are they going to? We know that children are the number one victims of dog bites. Period. End of story. That's a fact of life because they're lower to the ground. They're more animated. So you have to get a dog that's going to adapt to that lifestyle. Are they going to be good with kids screaming, jumping off the couches, or are they going to be fearful of that and bite them? Well,
and also, don't you think it's the responsibility of the parents, we're talking about children, to also teach the children how to some degree to respect the dog's space and boundary. So it's sort of a meeting in the middle.
Right. And it can be a great experience, but you can't teach a 2-year-old toddler anything, right? You're lucky if you can, just keep them basically safe around your regular household dangers.
Right.
So to expect a 2 or 3-year-old now, when children, absolutely, you have to teach children boundaries, when to leave dogs alone when they're eating, You have to teach dogs not to go on couches and become territorial and comfortable.
Right.
So I think the question here is what do those things you have to take into consideration? Are you going to be home? Are you working 12 hours a day? A lot of times I hear people are getting a dog to keep the other crazy-ass dog company. This is about the dumbest thing.
That is a very common thing.
Very
So
common.
why is that not a good idea?
Because the dog that you get is going to model after the crazy dog. So what we think, again, always back to anthropomorphism, we see a dog and it's chewing or barking all day and running around. So the natural human thought is if I had a companion, he wouldn't bark. He would settle down because he has, as a human, would have a companion and you'd be more balanced.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens. The dog is just going to pick up the traits of the other dog. So now you're going to have two crazy-ass dogs in the
So
house.
the better thing to do is to get the first dog in line with boundaries and structure and rules of the home. And once you have that down, that's the time to consider a second dog or a third dog.
Right.
But your suggestion is like, don't add to the craziness. If you already have one dog or two dogs that aren't understanding and interacting in a way that you want in the home.
Right. And ask yourself, be self-reflective, like you and I are, Jackie. Ask yourself, why am I getting the dog? What?
Right.
Now, people come up with all kind of crazy reasons. Some people get a dog, they want a guardian of the house. Some people want a dog for emotional support. Some people want a dog because their 3-year-old saw a dog on TV. Get the dog for the right reasons, just like you do for almost anything in life. But don't get it for an emotional reaction to COVID, for example, or whatever it is. Think of the long term, because dogs are going to be part of your life for 10, 12, 15 years. So think if you're 20 years old and going to college, probably shouldn't adopt a dog or get a dog because somebody's got to care for that dog for 10 or 12 years.
Okay, so someone's done that and they've determined it's the right thing. They have another dog in the house.
Right.
How do people go about doing this?
Well, as you said, the first dog has to respect boundaries. So if your dog is going ballistic when the doorbell rings, or he's barking, fence fighting with your neighbor's dog, meaning going back and forth, that's an indication. Some dogs, now if you bring your dog, if your dog comes to Houndstown all the time and he's social in our environment with 15 or 20 other dogs, that's a good indication the dog is going to be social with other dogs.
Right.
Now we got to find out is the other dog you're getting. Now, if it's a puppy, puppies by nature are going to adapt very well because they haven't been tainted by humans. They haven't been tainted by humans. So puppies, they're dogs. So why do dogs interact with one another? Because they're dogs. Why do fish swim? Because they're fish. So the problem comes in if you adopt a dog from a shelter, for example. He's there been there, he's a 3-year-old dog. You have no history on the dog, so you have no idea. Usually dogs in shelters are there for a reason, and it's not always because of a sad background story.
Right. Sometimes it's more serious behavior issues, and you really do have to take that into consideration when you're adopting a dog from a shelter, especially if there are kids in the home and another dog in the home, right? So do more research.
Research and evaluation. You know, you can put two dogs on one side of a chain link fence and see how they interact with one another. If they want, it doesn't have to be that complicated. We talk about doing temperament tests and evaluations, and the shelters do all of these kind of testing. Sometimes it can be done relatively simple, and you have to be in tune with your dog's behavior and the new dog's behavior.
And most shelters now, if you have another dog, they will want the dog in the shelter to meet the other dog. And that's a very responsible thing to do. And you can allow the shelter to help facilitate that. Right. But, isn't it also true that dogs can meet off the property? Say you bring your current dog to the shelter, they meet, and the dogs play in the play yard at the shelter, right? Mm-hmm. When you bring the dogs home, though, it's a whole different ball game because there's territorial issues that come into play. So how do people address that?
Completely. It's a completely different dynamic. So what you see in a neutral environment, like, children, the teacher will say, oh, your kid's great at school. And you're like, that's my kid? Not really.
And at home, they're crazy.
And bouncing off the wall. Right. So most important is setting boundaries if you don't have boundaries for your new dog, meaning if it goes on the couch and that's its couch, and another dog comes in, it's very likely that dog is going to snap at the other dog.
Right.
Because we've
even if they otherwise get along.
Yes.
It's just triggered by territorial things in the house. I mean, I
Toys.
experienced that with my own dogs, and they get along fine, but then you give them a marrow bone and they're growling at one another.
Right. So you put the marrow bones in the crates. So when I go to people's houses now for my behavioral work, I come in and it's very clear who owns the house. There's dog toys all over. There's 3 beds, 1 bed at the window, 1 bed in the bedroom, Tempur-Pedic bed. It's insanity.
Yeah.
So it's not the humans have lost ownership of their house. So they're just caretakers of the dog. And that's where you have to ask yourself always a simple question. Who is in charge here? Is the dog in charge of answering the door, or am I in charge of answering the door? Do I say to my dog, get off the couch, and he gets off, or does he growl at me? If he does that, you'd have to be very careful bringing anybody, children, any humans in.
Right, or another dog.
Especially, of course.
Because the dynamic will change. The dynamic will be adjusted when there's another energy force in the house.
Right. And generally speaking, inexperienced dog owners, I say get a medium, a small sized dog. So if there is some type of overt aggression that you didn't anticipate, it should be, generally speaking, again, taking kids out of the metric. I always remove kids because kids don't really they should be able to walk around your house without worrying that a dog is going to attack them. So,
and that's where the management of the dog has to be done properly in the home, right? And we talk a lot about crate training. Dogs are denning animals. Using a den for a dog to control the dog's behavior, because if you have little kids, you can't control their behavior, right? So setting up a safe place for a dog, a den, a crate in a bedroom, a guest room, somewhere away from the activity of the house. You can ask the dog to go there for 2, 3, 4 hours out of the day, and that way your family dynamic can remain intact without the dog having to be involved in every single thing you do in the house. So setting this up from the start is so hugely important.
Jackie, I couldn't agree with you more. So we have these emotional, romanticized images, like a Norman Rockwell picture of sitting, and this has happened to people with COVID, right? Adults. They rescued a dog. They think they're going to sit in front of their fireplace with their laptop and work from home with this new dog they just got from the shelter. After the honeymoon phase, which is just like our honeymoon, lasted about a week. And then, so there's a honeymoon phase where the dog has to adapt to this new environment and you adapt to the dog. But after a month or 2 goes by, the dog, like a recalcitrant house guest, starts taking over, and and then that's where all the trouble begins, and that's why we see such an uptick in our daycare.
Yeah,
because
it happened.
Explain how that happened, because people romanticize this Norman Rockwell image.
Yeah, well, I think, everyone adopted pets during the pandemic, which was wonderful. But after a couple of weeks, we started getting phone calls from people that were like, well, now I'm back to work. Like, I don't have time to focus on the dog now. They kind of got through that. They got their needs met by having this emotional bonding time with the dog, but then the dog continues to need structure. And, people are stressed out. They're working from home. They've got kids virtual learning, and they just couldn't remain kind of giving that much attention to the dog.
Right. And the dog got adjusted. So now on the Zoom calls, the dog's in the background barking, eating your underwear, and you can't focus on the business at hand. So where do they go? They come to Houndstown. So all of this anthropomorphic emotional stuff is good for us, frankly, right? Because we're the place that...
Yeah, and it's great that customers own dog owners recognize the need for the dog to have this experience. So that is a huge testament to people understanding at least that the dog needs to get out of the house and he needs to get in an environment that's going to allow him to thrive. Right. And there's a lot of value to that. So having a backup plan, my sister adopted a dog over the pandemic, and she asked for our advice. And one of the pieces of my advice was have a backup plan. Have a daycare that you can walk to if you need to work 12 hours and you need to go somewhere, because it's like having support when you have a baby. Like, you've got to think it through. What's your support system for making sure that you can manage this properly? Right. And the second piece of advice, which you gave to her, was get a smaller dog. She lives in a smaller space. Get a smaller dog. It's easier to manage all around. Right.
But to your point, think it out, because most people, again, they do this impulse. Almost every rescue or adoption is impulsive because we've lost a dog, and the immediate fix for that is to get another dog. So it's hard. I get it. We are always saying that's it, but we always add another dog to our pack, and we do it. And we take all these misfits, which we enjoy, but we have to manage them. We're having a party tonight. One dog comes to doggy daycare. Another dog is going to be interacting because it's very social. So it's not everything is one price fits all. You have to have, what you said, alternatives. So it is a testament to our Houndstown customers. What's not a testament is those people who selfishly rescued dogs in March of 2020. And then when they realized they had to go back to work, the dog went back to the shelter. Yeah. Which is, of course, it's just not right. So the shelters were empty, and now they're back to being full.
That's true. Thank you, so you got to think out the long term of this. And I think the biggest piece of advice, the biggest takeaway is to make sure that the dog or dogs you have currently are under control and really respecting the boundaries of the home. And if that's not the case, you can get the dogs there. It's never too late to teach an old dog new tricks.
That's true.
Dogs are just waiting for leadership and structure, and there are resources out there to help people figure that out. And then to, expand their dog family if that's what they're looking to do.
That's what you're doing for a long term, for the next decade. So consistency, leadership, and boundaries. Leadership, consistency, and boundaries. It's so simple that most people can't do it. But come to Houndstown and we'll show you how leadership, consistency, and boundaries is actually executed. Done.
And actually a great resource for this as we wrap up this shorter episode is our YouTube channel. So Houndstown USA, Houndstown University on YouTube. We have so many videos dating back 5, 6, 7 years on dog training, Mike doing a boot camp, teaching you what does that look like? It's great to say, provide leadership, but what does that look like, in your home? And there are a lot of great videos on YouTube that can kind of you can help visualize what that looks like.
So it's not about yelling, screaming, pinch collars, nothing. It's about energy, a certain just understanding of dogs.
All right. We'll see everybody next time. Thanks for watching another exciting episode of the Dish on Dogs podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube on the Dish on Dogs podcast. If you're a listener, you can catch us on iTunes, Spotify, and all your other podcast platforms. For more information, click the link in the description. We'll see everybody next time.